Okay, meeting Wednesday, January 19th, Auburn Water Trustees, Water District Trustees. First item is approve minutes of the regular meeting, December 15th. Got a motion?
I'll make the motion. I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor? All there.
Yeah, we were both absent.
Okay,
So
so
we're
we got
together
Two
and
abstaining.
two abstaining.
Yep.
Passes. Approve the minutes of special joint meeting, December 15. Do we have a motion?
So moved. I'll second it.
All right, any discussion? All in favor? Okay, two abstain. Approve the minutes of public meeting, hearing, December 15th. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
second.
All, any discussion? All in favor? We all know how this works, right? Everybody could just chirp in.
That's right.
It's not a riddle. It's not a trick question. All right. Financial report, Tanya.
All right. Revenues ended the year favorable, 150,000 versus budget. Expenses were also favorable, about 175,000, leaving the surplus from operations 334,000 over budget. 860,000 was spent on capital for the year, and we ended the year with 1.8 million cash on hand. And the water district is closing on a new dump truck tomorrow. We do have a resolution to approve further on, a new business on the agenda. We are financing it through Androscoggin Bank with a 7-year lease to purchase agreement. And the truck costs 171,000. We're gonna explain that with sewer.
Don't give me trade in,
I thought I saw in the document
That's what
146,000.
we're financing, yes, yep.
And the financing is, oh, Sid, why aren't we doing like we did on the excavator, a 5-year lease? Why 7? That seems like it's a long way.
Well, we had different options for financing. We could have done a 5, 7, 10. 7 was the one that put us within the budget because we had appropriated
12.5 each.
12 each.
12.5, yeah.
12.5 each, so that the 7-year financing put us within our budget.
Was it that much more in interest for 2 more years? Don't worry about it. It is gonna be more interest, but it is what it is. Thank you.
Well, one thing that was presented yesterday too was that these truck dealers are kind of like the car dealers. There's a shortage of inventory, so they call the shots. So we can't go in and get a bid and get the actual lowest price on something like that, even if we wanted to wait 4 months for them to make one for us, and I don't think they can do that. So the diligence was to try and get the best deal they could, but they're just like a car. If you buy a new car today, they're gonna say, here's the price, take it and leave it, goodbye, next customer.
All right.
And that's what they do.
So on the financial report, is that, are you all set? Do you have more stuff? Yeah. Casey, question.
Looking at the cash on hand,
Yep,
over the past 2 years, we've gone from 600,000 to 1.8 million.
yep.
Is that going to keep going up? Or are we not spending enough money on something, or?
Well, we had some projects get canceled this year, which
Was that because
$1.2
the city council projects? That's
That's over
why?
2 years.
we,
But still,
We got, as we went over this, well, a couple of months ago, we got, the last 3 weeks of the year, we got hit with COVID, which shut down one of our projects. So that would have hit this capital item. And looking forward, to answer your question about how the money is trending, we're in this position because of the rate increase we put in place back in 2020. And I think this coming year, you're going to see that cash on hand go down quite a bit, because as you know, the cost of materials is skyrocketed, labor is skyrocketed for any contracted projects we do. The chemical bids or the chemical vendors that are coming in now, we're seeing some elevated prices as well. So I think we're gonna need this surplus that we have to maintain it, especially if we're gonna really be looking at we do our plan for 2 miles of pipe this year. So I think you're gonna see that number come down quite a bit.
and some you're going to contract out.
Yes.
because the city's redoing the streets and.
Right.
And that might cost us more than doing it ourselves.
We're gonna do a combination, there is quite a bit we're gonna do in-house, but to get that 2 miles, we are gonna have to contract some of it out. And we do have some of that already obligated. The Third Street project, there was a section we didn't do, or the contractor didn't get to last year, so that's gonna be, if you remember from last year, that was quite an expensive project, because that one was farmed out, so that's gonna hit our bottom line as well.
And the streets down by near Washington School, that's gonna be contracted out, that's, the city's gonna be down there doing also, right?
We're still working on that, to be determined still.
Okay, so as far as financial report?
Yeah, that's all, just, climbing, on-handed climbing up
It's a
and
big number.
we don't know why.
Thank you. Anybody else, Tanya, are you finished with
I
your
am done,
report?
yep.
Anybody else have any questions for Tanya on this, or we can move along? Okay. Ratified payment of bills.
I
Bob,
move that we
everything good?
ratify, thank you, I move that we ratify the payment of bills.
I'll second that.
Okay, anybody have any other questions? Bob, you
I had a few, and they were taken care of, Tanya and our meter man.
Great. So we're good there, all in favor? Good, it passes. Open session. Anybody here?
Just a question, did we move trustee open session off of this? And do we combine them? or-
No, they're not
This is for-
combined.
This is for the public, I just don't see the trustee one anymore.
No, it's not on there.
That's the next thing, right?
That's a mistake.
Oh, yeah, that's right, good note, good
Okay,
note.
so the open session's closed. Activity report, project update. Mike?
Activity reports, again, this time of year, we go more to a winter maintenance. You'll see that in the work we were doing. We did in December wrap up some of the paving. We were lucky, the weather stayed favorable long enough to get that paving done. We certainly pulled it right to the wire. We did have it doesn't show up on this activity report, it actually hit on the sewer one. On Pine Street, one of the streets, we replaced the water main as we were going along with the water main. You always find on these old streets, especially that one, I mean, that water main was 1890s. You're digging through and you find all these pipes that, is this one active? You know, you usually go in, you dye test, yep, this one's active, oh, reconnect that to the sewer. And you run into a lot of them that they are no longer active, they're just old pipes in the ground. Well, we hit one that apparently was active and we thought was inactive, so we didn't reinstate it. And in December, the sewage finally started backing up into the building. They called us, we investigated it, sure enough, didn't get reconnected, so we had to dig down and do that. Just letting you know, so in case you hear it, we did have to pay because they had hired Able to come in. They thought their pipe was just plugged, so they came in trying to clean the roots out or whatever and found that we hit dirt. So, anyways, we got that reinstated. That's all set now. But again, the rest is just winter maintenance. We try to get caught up on all the hydrants. You can see we had a bunch of them that we got fixed up that are now back in service. We winterize and check all our hydrants through the winter. As the snow depths creep up, we make sure all the hydrants have flags in the areas where they're hard to see. And again, we try to get into more of a maintenance mode. So we're doing a lot of training. We're going to be doing some clearing of cross-country water mains and that type of stuff. But
Mike?
Yeah.
On services, the first one is missing MXU. Is that the transmitting unit for the
that is the
meter?
transmitting unit for the meter. That location had built a new deck, and where the deck went on, that's where the MXU used to be mounted.
Mhm.
When we went to go read the meters, it didn't read, hey, where's your MXU? What MXU? It got removed when they put the deck on. So we do charge the customer for that because that was mounted there, so.
Okay, it didn't see how they go
The
missing.
nice thing about that, it's kind of like a GPS. We can ping it. It's no longer on this site. It's no longer in this town. We're not even picking it up. So it's nowhere near your house anymore. It was here for 5 years and now it's gone. So
Okay,
yeah, so that's what that is.
not my fault.
Any other questions on the activity report?
Last page,
Yeah.
other activities, number
Yep.
2.
Here,
Repair
meter deck.
leaks, were those leaking meters that you fixed on the bench? I don't think the bench was leaking.
No, it was the bench. So
The
that's
bench, really?
Yep, just some old gaskets that, for the different size meters, we have different gaskets. We had finally got a hold of the gaskets we need and got those fixed.
Great. That's it with everybody? Good. Thank you, Mike. That brings us to new business, water quality. Yeah.
President,
Yeah.
I'd like to suspend the rules and add to new business the job review
Okay.
regarding the job description and an
All right.
executive session.
So we need let's vote to suspend the business, suspend the rules. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on that?
Just that, I know it might have been left off, but prior to the job review, we're supposed to look at the job description for the next year. So, and that's what I wanted to discuss.
Okay.
I think it's part of the job review, just to kind of clear, like, it's not required, when I was reading it, it doesn't have to be first, it has to be part of the process when we do that.
Okay.
That's.
I'm thinking 10 minutes.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's fine. So we're voting to suspend the rules to add this item. All in favor?
Sure.
Okay, good, that's passed. And then,
Maybe after the city of Auburn?
why don't we just, some of this stuff might take some, why don't we just do it now?
Okay.
You wanna just do it now?
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna declare us an executive session. That's all I gotta do, right?
You gotta do a vote to
Um,
go into it.
All in favor of going to executive session? Okay?
And I think we should say in regards to a personnel
A
matter.
personnel matter,
And
correct.
then,
An
right.
executive session regarding personnel matter. Perfect. Okay? We're in. We are, okay, we are out of executive session.
I would like to make a motion to amend the general manager superintendent's position description effective September 2019 to remove bullet item serves as clerk of the Lake Auburn Watershed Protection Commission to represent the Auburn Water District.
Second.
Any discussion on that?
Two things. One, we talked about Sid continues role as clerk until LawPEC and the Auburn Water District trustees can come to a decision as to how that plays in. And the second note was this is a position that was added just 3 or 4 years ago. So we're just removing what was added 3 or 4 years ago.
To the job description.
Yeah.
To the job
To the
description.
formal job description.
Right.
It's not
That's
to an evaluation in any way to judge Sid on whether or not his performance in that position was good. It's just simply removing that item from the job description, correct?
Right. Personally, I just feel that superintendent shouldn't have to say, this is part of my job, I have to do this.
It's not, right.
Right.
It doesn't have to be a formal part of the job, right. So, any other discussion? All in favor? Okay, that's it passes, okay? All right, moving on. Sid, water quality.
This time of year, there's not a whole lot to report on water quality. We just really hope the ice comes in and forms nice and thick. At the time I wrote this, we were still kind of in a warm spell, but I mentioned at the time that it looked like there was some cold weather coming, and it has. So the lake is finally set up.
One question, they had an
Yep.
issue, I think I was hearing about it at the last meeting over at the dialysis center, and others, that there was something going on. Was there anything going on?
It was that, if you remember back in the fall, we had that particular algae that was becoming predominant called ocystis.
Yeah.
And that's what I think was a residual that got into the distribution system. So that, we have not had an issue, that was an isolated incident we had, and it's not an issue anymore.
Okay. Okay, good, so we're good? Is that good for water quality, Sid?
Yes.
Okay, resolution. Authorization to execute lease transaction.
Let me take that one, Tanya.
We actually got a new resolution this morning from bond counsel. He changed a couple ands and ors in there on bullet number 2 and bullet number 4.
Is that this?
That is that, yeah. So he said we needed to accept the new resolution to replace the one that's in the agenda packet. And then we need the vote to,
Okay. Did you guys read it? Is it any significance?
he said just due
Anything
to
we
the
need to be
lease,
concerned with?
lease financing, he recommended taking out the countersign by its treasurer because it doesn't need dual
So-
signatures.
So Andy's off the hook and I still gotta sign?
He said he would recommend both signatures, he still recommends both.
I haven't got a problem after reading
And
it.
then we changed on the fifth bullet down, he changed, the and to or on the second line. By the president and treasurer of the district, this is president or treasurer.
Okay.
So pretty minuscule changes,
Yeah.
they were due to the lease
So we need to
financing.
approve this?
We need
Okay,
to,
do we have a motion to approve?
we need to accept the,
Motion to accept?
yes, motion to
Make a
accept.
motion to accept.
Second?
Second.
Okay, any other discussion? All in favor? Okay, accepted?
All right, does everybody want a new copy?
I mean, but is this my permanent copy?
That is your
Or-
permanent copy, yeah, we can get you signed. Absolutely, yep.
And I did request a copy of the buy-sell agreement, folks, and it matches exactly, so some of the language in there talked about any and all, they kept calling it a project, and so it was unclear as if, what was it, you know, it said it was the one truck and its accessories, blah, 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 so just wanted to make sure we looked at the buyer's order and it did match it there.
Good.
There's nothing extra.
Okay.
It's a truck.
We're buying a truck. A lot of resolutions. Okay.
We need to approve. So now we need the
Oh.
motion to, and vote to approve,
To allow you and I to sign.
Can we just
Yes.
change?
Okay,
yes.
So that's what we're doing, you're voting to allow the president and the president to sign.
Yep.
okay, so do we have a motion to allow the president and the treasurer to sign? Somebody move it? Okay, second? Okay, second KC. Any other discussion? All in favor? Okay, unanimous.
Great, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Get a truck.
You got a truck.
Yep.
We get a big one home?
Tomorrow.
Who gets the first drive? That's what, that's.
Who's gonna go get it?
Yeah.
You?
They're gonna deliver it.
You, oh,
Maybe
yeah.
I won't take it.
Take it for the first
I
drive.
love some.
There you
The
go.
new truck smell.
They keep forgetting
New
I have
trucks,
my.
New trucks now, yeah.
You're not driving it.
They keep forgetting I have my CDL.
We'll take it to a
Do we
sewer
have
project,
CDL?
so we can get rid of that
Oh.
new car, new truck smell.
Nice. All right, so good. Now we're on City of Auburn proposed land use changes within the watershed. And Sid?
Yep.
I asked you to put this on here, so the point being for you to educate us on what your opinion is of that, when, I believe, correct?
Sure, yep.
And because you spoke at city council against that, against the proposals that were put forward.
Not this one.
Not
I haven't addressed this one.
Okay, what is this for?
This is, well, back on January 3rd,
Mm-hmm.
a proposal, and there's a copy in your packet. There was a workshop and a city council meeting where it was brought up some changes to the ordinance around and in the watershed. There were two things in particular that directly affected the watershed. One of them was changing the watershed boundary as it currently exists. As you know, across from Public Works is a Grace Lawn pit. It's a pit. The watershed boundary goes right down Grace Lawn Road and includes the pit right now. But there was a proposal to extend or remove a major piece of that gravel pit out of the watershed because any rain that falls in that pit stays in the pit, doesn't go to the lake. And above and beyond that, there's been extensive work done reviewing the groundwater contours, where the water goes when it sinks in the ground. It actually does not go towards the lake, it goes away from the lake. And that's been well documented. So, you know, that change, I'm pretty vanilla on that one, whether that goes through or not. I don't think that's a huge deal either way.
Okay.
There was a second proposal that, well, there were a few others that don't affect the watershed, but there was one in particular that would affect the watershed. That was voted on by the council to reprioritize that and address it kind kind of down the line, so there's not a specific date when that's gonna be addressed, but it's coming up after this pit revision is addressed. I assume it's gonna be sometime in
And what
February,
is
March.
it? What is?
That one is going to be changes to the septic standards that are currently in the city's code. And I have, it was,
Casey, you got a question?
Well,
I want to go back to the pit fund.
sure,
If they develop something there, are we gonna be making sure that they don't redirect the water, any runoff water to the lake?
that is a good point. Yes, we will need to. We want to make sure that whatever they put in there, and actually that was addressed today at one of the Plan Review Committee workshop. Right, they couldn't, yeah, we still have to keep an eye on what's going in there, what gets approved,
Okay.
looking at it, to make sure it doesn't affect.
Yeah,
the
Making sure all of a sudden they
Yeah.
shift.
Right, because there could be some incompatible uses. I mean, if they end up filling that pit, say, so it drains to the lake and then start developing, yeah, that's,
it could be a problem.
it would be,
Yeah.
it would
Put a
look
big-
at it on a case
Put a
by
big
case
flat top
basis.
with all the water running.
So I personally walked it, and long story short, there's a huge like higher elevation section. So they really would have to do a shoreland violation to move any and disturb any of that soil along the Southern Link Trail area where that's going in. So it's gonna be pretty hard, I think, for them to do anything, but as long as we note that concern,
Definitely is a concern.
that, hey, as long as you don't change the watershed by construction.
Now,
Yeah. The second question, more important to the district, I would think, would be, can they draw water from the lake for fire suppression, for their own domestic water purposes? Those are the types of things this district should be thinking about, because it's right there. And we would lose a lot of money in infrastructure that we just put in on Mount Grace Lawn Road, if all of a sudden they decide to do their own fire protection and their own, you know what I'm saying? I think that's more an important topic for this board, and I think the other environmental issues are more important topics for LawPac.
well, we don't, fire protection, we don't pay based on the flow anyway. They pay out based on percentage of the rates that the ratepayers pay, so.
All right,
So
so
we
hold
think
hold on,
that's
so
fair.
let's get to what the land use changes particularly. So that's the one, and I think Sid's okay with that now, and with that boundary.
Mhm.
He's not okay with the septic.
Now, one question I had though, that's it, I thought that was a list of items that was being referred to the planning board,
Correct.
They are.
and then it's coming back to council to
Correct.
consider. So it's not like something to push down the road or tabled.
Right.
It was a recommendation for that, along with a few other recommendations to have the planning board.
They were prioritized. The septic ordinance is not going to be reviewed right off the bat. It was A, B, C, D.
Yeah.
And D was the septic ordinance, and that's
Right.
not the first thing they're gonna be looking at.
So it'd be a while before
This is
council
separate.
is giving any recommendations from council about the septic.
From the planning board, right.
So I don't know if it's premature to spend a lot of time on it now, but maybe you can let us know what your opinion is, but.
The only thing I have to add is, the city of Auburn has the science and the engineering stamp to back up their report. And what do we have on septic, other than
And-
years of,
Well, this is what my question,
Speculation.
again, not to, the point of this agenda item was to get Sid's opinion about why he disagrees with the way that it's going to the planning board, based on the report that came out that suggested we do this. And so I need to understand, my request was, I want to understand, and we as trustees need to understand where his position is and what his disagreement is with the EPA and with the other things with regards to
Septic.
this septic ordinance. It's not an ordinance, it's a septic recommendation based on the water report going to the planning board. Yeah,
Before we move to septic, this puts this land change, a portion to the development, the potential development in the pit area now. Any development that goes in there is gonna be required to be on city sewer, correct? They're not gonna
City
be able
water
to,
and
they're not
sewer.
gonna be able to build a new residence
Well, there's
and
been-
put septic in.
There's been nothing proposed. Whatever gets proposed is gonna have to be reviewed on its own merit. I have no idea what might come in the future for any development, whether there's any at all in that pit. But we haven't seen it, so it depends on what gets proposed, whether it's residential, commercial, I have no idea what they might do
Right.
with it.
And I think as the,
Well,
we
would
have
that
the
be
authority, do we
required?
not? We have the authority to say whether something can or can't be done based on our opinion whether it hurts the lake.
Are they gonna need to connect to city sewer? Any
But-
development, I don't care what it is.
No one's, that's to be determined.
Okay, that's my
That's a good, I
concern.
think they should.
We put a whole bunch of houses in there, and
They
then
should.
they're all septic, and then,
Well, I'm sure
but they could be sewer.
Bob, I would assure the planning board would make that recommendation. So they
Yeah.
would say, we want to develop this area, and the planning board would say, okay, as long as
Right,
these criteria is met, so the planning board would tell us that.
yeah. That's what they do.
That's what they, so if there's no services, they say, we don't recommend this because there are no services, or we do recommend this, we recommend that they hook up all of their services to our utilities. So that always comes with a planning board decision on whether we should do something or not.
Question for Sid?
Hold on.
The
Yeah,
state plumbing code says that if any portion of your lot is within 200 feet of public sewer, you must connect to public sewer, and there is sewer on Grace Lawn Road. So anything on
goes there,
that
it's
lot
gonna have to.
is gonna have to connect to public sewer according to the state
But
plumbing
if
code
it's a
rules.
Thank you.
subdivided lot.
If it is subdivided, again, we haven't seen
Well,
any
it's
plans,
gonna-
we can make assumptions all day
right,
long.
let's,
Right,
we're,
in there.
the rabbit
We're
hole,
going-
let's
we're going
stick
down a-
to the agenda.
Right.
Okay? Well, yes.
So the question for Sid, the last one, that you have a problem with the septic. Do you have a problem with the septic design? Or do you have a problem with the 100 or whatever houses they're saying could be built?
Let's, if you don't mind, if I could go through this,
Yes.
could I go through my
That's what we
memo?
want.
Yeah,
Because this, I wrote this memo very deliberately to put my thought together.
On the
So,
7th, but was it mailed out to us? I never got it.
That was,
I left it out of the packet.
that was it was in the electronic version that you got by email.
yeah.
I didn't realize until later that this letter was not included in the paper.
So let's take 5 minutes and read the memo.
If I could just read down through it with you, because this really encapsulates my thoughts on this, okay? So, you know, I'm writing this regarding the City of Auburn's effort to revise the septic ordinance in the watershed overlay district at the January 3rd, 2022 Auburn City Council meeting. They heard a presentation from the planning staff where they recommended moving forward with adopting some state septic standards in the watershed, citing portions of the lake study that FB Environmental completed for the city. Of particular concern to me was the recommendation to allow the importation of fill to achieve the 36 inches of vertical separation from seasonal groundwater. That is not currently allowed in the existing ordinance. Citing the report, allowance of this revision could result in the addition of up to 100 new homes in the watershed. The 36-inch separation standard is the cornerstone of our lake protection efforts and is cited as a requirement for maintaining our filtration waiver from the DEP. As you know from previous studies and verified in the FB report, a filtration plant could cost $45 million to construct and add $1.5 million in annual operating costs. This could drive up water rates by 50% and double fire protection charges to the city. As cited in the FB study, water supply managers cannot forego water quality protection efforts simply because a filtration system is in place. And that's a very important point, and I've stated it before, but I wanted to make sure that I stated it again. You can't build a filter plant and then just develop the lake, and you
Right.
can't have dirty water and then filter it out. That's just not the way
You're not going
filter
to
systems
lose all
Correct,
those
understood.
costs.
Okay, yep.
The FB report recognized the need to protect the lake and stated that restrictions on developable land are better left to base and resource protection zoning than to septic design standards. And that was something, a very important point that was kind of left out too. They recognized the need to protect the lake and suggested that it might make more sense to do it through zoning, restricting zoning, than to putting in restrictive septic standards. That's just another way of doing the same thing. This statement suggests considering a different approach to lake protection, but I believe it would have the same net effect. If land in the watershed was zoned to restrict development, there would be no need to adopt stringent septic standards. Given that there would be no net increase in lake protection, I would not recommend going through the effort to revise the zoning ordinances either. In other words, if you just take all the land around the lake and zone it as non-developable, you could do that, but I mean, that I wouldn't suggest doing that. That would deem your land completely valueless, and the city would get no tax revenue whatsoever from that. So I don't think that's something the city would want to do either. When the legislature formed the district in 1923, the charter gave the district the power of the same force and level of municipal ordinances to prevent pollution to the waters of Lake Auburn and to preserve the purity of the water. I view this section in the charter as an obligation on the part of the trustees to oppose this revision to the ordinance, and perhaps more importantly, not allow the city to usurp authority over the district as it pertains to adoption of ordinances that may negatively affect the lake. You may recall in 2019, the Lake Auburn Watershed Protection Commission delivered a resolution to the city, at that time opposing ordinance revisions to the ag zone that could result in the relaxing of development standards around the lake. Although this issue has not yet, this particular issue has not yet come before the Lake Auburn Watershed Protection Commission Board, the next meeting is on February 9th. It will surely be a topic of discussion to bring up at that time. The Auburn Planning Board will be deliberating this issue in the next few months through a series of public meetings. It will then be sent back to the City Council for a first and second reading. So, given the importance of this issue, I'm seeking input from the Board of Trustees on their stance on this issue and the level of involvement expected from me and my staff. So, you know, I really need to know what this board,
right,
I don't know if it's gonna happen tonight, but,
I have some questions.
okay, sure.
The key point of this, as I see, that you, based on what you said, my question is today, if someone wants to build a house in the Lake Auburn watershed overlay,
Right.
and their septic system has a natural 36 inches,
A gravel
can-
pit.
right? They can build it,
Mhm.
correct?
Yep, that's one of the requirements, yep.
Okay. Why would the importation of fill to achieve that be not okay?
There are a couple of different things. If you bring in dump loads of fill in order to get that, you've got a mounded system that could be more subject to failure. The side slopes could be subject to leaching out. It just adds complexity to the design of the leach field.
If it works properly, is there any difference in a fill from a functional standpoint, working properly? Because I'm sure there are old septic systems within the overlay that are failing. And I just went through this whole thing at my camp. So we took out a 1972 septic system and put in an Enviro septic system near our lake. It's far superior. So would it be that the new septic systems could be superior to an old septic system that's already in the watershed?
I can tell you that no system that has been put in with the current standard has failed. If you started importing fill, would more systems fail?
Well, remember, replacement systems can go in the old system. So we've got a lot of replacement systems that are already been built since this ordinance took place that have failed or are not failing.
If they were grandfathered.
But the key is, I think,
That's what I mean, for granted.
is the house is being built. So I think it would be prudent for this board and the representatives of this board to require any additional homes built under these standards, because they're better standards, science says they're better, be required to incorporate low-impact development standards in the yard, in the construction process, and in addition to that, that new home will be required to log into a utility such as an RME, which is a responsible management entity, to make sure that tank gets inspected on a yearly basis, and it'll never be better than it was, and that their pet waste gets taken care of, and that their fertilizers are not, the education processes out there, and that they're not changing their oil in their yard. These are all things that a responsible management entity does in critical watersheds. So we could be very simply sending a suggestion to the city that yes, you've got the science, but do not change that rule until low impact development standards and an RME is required for a new home built in the Lake Auburn watershed. And then you'll get existing homes to join in on that, and boom, that takes care of it. Again, this is a de facto zoning tool, and as long as we keep smoking the same ganja that we've been smoking for 30 years, that you can't put a septic system out in that lake, the more that people are going to look at us like we're ridiculous, we're stupid, and this is an incredibly stupid way to govern land. Anyway, is that my input?
So so you're gonna have to create an army?
We don't have to create an
Hold on,
army.
hold on.
Just
This-
require an army.
That's a different subject. So
Yeah.
what we're talking about is this particular, the Sid's objection to the septic, because that's what's going to the planning board.
And the thing is, I think that I read it, is, and everybody that I've talked to, they're not against changing the septic ordinance, except that it will result in
A
up
new
to 100 new houses,
Right?
and they just worry that that's trouble. Now, we can say it
That
won't
is
be, but they're worried that an additional 100 houses will be trouble if it's all in the watershed. That's what they're saying.
Right.
So it's a conjecture thing.
It-
Well, if you build
What-
50
and I'm-
houses with all their, other runoff and non-pervious areas, they're afraid that that's gonna be the problem, not the septic. So we're using the septic to prevent what they think is another problem. Now, can they prove that those 50 houses will not cause any runoff or any issues? Maybe what you're talking about is the answer, that they have to be checked. But they're worried if there's a long driveway going down, the water's running off, the driveway impervious surfaces, where's that gonna go? They're always worried about all those things that happen.
All the new houses will have to have a phosphorus control plan. It's already in the ordinance.
If it's restrictive enough, I think we can make the house clean
So-
and safe. But again, those have to be in place before, I think.
It's the runoff from the new house.
Again,
is the big
again, my
concern.
question is, first, I know where you're,
Okay.
Sid. What is the objection on, because you said it could fail.
It's added risk, Dan.
Is it compliant with the EPA? And the other thing, and you mentioned that we could lose our waiver. How? I'd like to know how.
Because it's written into our approval for our filtration waiver,
What-
36-inch separation ordinance that we have in
Right,
place.
does the fill, by putting fill in, violate that?
I believe it does.
Could, where? Could you, could
It's
you
currently
show
not,
us?
it's currently not allowed in order to get that filtration waiver, we submitted to the DEP our overlay ordinance. That was part of the application to get our waiver. And all that was spelled out within it, so it's all
Is it-
linked back to
Is
the
it
waiver.
possible to get somebody's
approval.
opinion, the person who would make that
we
decision?
have-
Here's where, if the answer's no, I'm okay with the no. But just because I think that's what it is, I'm not okay with that. If we're following science, which says this is as good as natural, or better, if it follows what the EPA says, the state EPA, if it follows the law, this affects the water payers and it affects the taxpayers in Auburn. What is the science that says, or the particular statute or rule within that waiver, we need to identify exactly where that says that. Otherwise, we're making a conjecture, we're just saying conjecture. I think this, and somebody else says, well, I think this. And it's two different people's opinion. If you can say, here's on the waiver, where it says, if you put fill at 36 inches in there, we're gonna lose our waiver. You say it.
If you'd like, I guess I could take that and send it up to the drinking water program and see if they think.
Yes.
Why don't we let our
Adopt
city
this.
consultants do that?
Well,
They're the ones that have studied it and.
I think it should
As
come
I
from
pointed
the
out in the study, they've already said that relaxing the development standards to the septic ordinance is counterproductive to 99% of their report already. And one thing that I mentioned in this letter that keeps getting ignored is that they said that if you want to protect the lake, it's better done through zoning than septic standards. That's a critical piece of their recommendation that has not been considered. They're recommending.
So what's the zoning you're recommending?
I'm not recommending changing anything. The city's consultant recommended changing the zoning if we want to get equivalent protection of the lake. That was something that was not brought up, but it's in their report.
What zone, so,
They're
I'm trying
saying-
to understand, again,
They're saying if.
I'm
if you
feeling,
want-
I'm
They're saying
sensing,
if you want to protect the lake, then it's better done through restrictive zoning than septic standards.
so it's already
So-
restrictively zoned.
Only through the,
Well-
only through the septic. And of course, the
Phosphorus
farming part of
control.
it.
It's gotta fall, there's an
The
overlay.
acreage and the farming.
It's an overlay you
Shoreline
can't
zone.
build in unless it passes.
Zone
No,
four.
no, you
Like-
can't. I mean, they have they have part of it that has the farming, right? The agricultural, and you have to have so many acres and make so much money, and then you have to have a good septic. So they're already pretty restricted. Remember, that was the cause in 2019, was they wanted to lower the acreage requirement and the income requirements to build, to have a house in the ag zone, and part of that ag zone was the watershed. So, of course, they had to take that out of that whole statute.
So my
Now they're
goal,
worried about it. So
my
there are
goal
other-
in this
There are other.
is to reduce the emotion and increase the science. So that the planning board is making a scientific decision based on what makes the most sense for the lake. We're not having antagonistic back and forth and finger pointing and all the other things, because that's what's happening now. Everyone's all, the lake's gonna get dirty, we can't build any houses. We can't do this, we can't, we need science. And
that's-
if, and we can't just say, well, we're gonna lose our,
Well,
we're
one
gonna
thing-
lose our waiver filtration. All right, I need that produced.
Who
That's,
designated the watershed area, by the way? How is that
Well,
designated?
that's done by the contours of the land around the lake.
So like, I'm going back to
So-
an earlier project, Lost Valley, they wanted to have that place that was gonna, I can't even pronounce the name of the company. They were gonna build to assemble snow grooming equipment.
Right.
And everybody got up in arms because they were gonna destroy the watershed.
Well, that was in the Taylor Pond watershed.
Okay, but it's still, that's in the Taylor
It's,
Pond
well,
watershed.
the watershed's based upon the contours of the land, where a drop of water falls, where it goes.
So it's closer to
If it
Taylor
goes to the
Pond.
lake.
but who
if it goes-
determines that?
That's determined by the contours of
But-
geography around the lake.
But who?
So they,
Like, who
they,
draws the line?
they take the best science,
The
and
entity-
the best,
what
the
entity
best
says
zoning
that?
and surveying data, and then if there's
The
ever a
state?
question, they actually go out there and they can determine and change and delineate a new
Because that may be
watershed.
part of the,
That's
So
not
it's
a USGS
you either walk
map.
on site or you just assume it.
that might be part of the solution, instead of having a whole area that's governed by an ag zone, acreage requirement and a septic requirement. Instead, look at what the area that's being covered, and does it all have to be covered?
Well, that's what the overlay. But again, I still, when I see this, my questions are, you're saying, your position is that the fill is worse than natural. And that it's not conforming.
It's going to lessen lake protection if you allow fill to be, it's gonna result in the construction of 100 new homes in accordance with the FB study.
It's the
So
whole-
is the issue the construction of the homes or the septic? So, in other words, that's exactly what Andy said, is are we using the septic to eliminate the building of the homes? Because that's what it sounds like to me.
That's what we are, and you admitted, I think, in your presentation here, right now, that's how we do it, rather than using zoning, we use a restrictive rule like the septic.
That's right in the report. The report
The
calls
FB
it
study
out.
recommended if this is gonna be adopted, it should be, instead of doing it through septic design, it should be done through zoning.
And then look at those areas, and maybe not all of it needs to be zoned as restrictive as it is right now, but right now, the entire overlay is.
Yeah, but you gotta.
If that was gonna be looked at and done, to me, and as I said in my report, to me, that's a redundant exercise, because you get the same level of protection. If you're gonna change the zonings to say you can't build within a certain area of the lake, then you wouldn't need to change this, you could adopt state septic standards. But again, I don't think that would be worth the effort, because you got the same net benefit of lake protection.
We could definitely forbid building in all the LOPEX land. That's an example where doesn't matter if it changes hands, there'll never be building in that area, which is what we bought over the years to protect the lake. So,
I mean,
outside of LOPEX land, was it 1,800, 2,000 acres now? Roughly? Outside of that, then we have the city ordinances that govern that.
So, I mean, my feeling is if we could get clarification, unsolicited and objective from the water quality folks, that would say that a man-made 36-inch system, the state required, state approved, works in place of a natural 36-inch, then I have no objection to the building of more houses. I think some people have the problem is because I know neighbors up in West Auburn, and they want what they want, they don't want anybody near them, they don't want anybody else to have what they have. So the last thing they want to do is give that to somebody else, so they're gonna fight like heck.
But science, how do you address the runoff from the additional impervious areas that the house creates? That's where the low impact development standards come.
And that's when we can decide, okay, now you can do this, but now we're
So,
gonna talk about the next.
again, so we've got the law pack area, and we've got the non-law pack area, that are in the non-law pack
Watershed.
area that's in the watershed, correct?
Yeah,
There's
watershed.
non-law pack area in the watershed?
I don't
Of
think
course,
so.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, does, you know, is it different? Is there different, and I'm asking, this is a question, is the land 10 feet from the lake different than the land 500 feet from the lake? Like, is there,
Me, as far as more critical?
right?
Yeah, of
like,
course.
So is the land that's law pack different than the land that's non-law pack? Like, if we're gonna do it zoning, that's zoning, is you can build here, you can't build here.
Yeah, that's.
And how do we determine where you can and where you can't? Like, right now, we're
Usually
just.
you see a setback and grades and all that stuff that would determine
That's but-
what has the best.
But again, I'm asking Sid to, the answers, your answer is no, right now. That's what I'm hearing, like, is there any, you know, your claim is no because we're gonna lose our filtration. And 36 inches of fill is worse. Like, is there anywhere that's yes?
Isn't that a phone call? I mean, you call and say, hey, if we,
I can
will
do that, I can
will we
contact,
lose our?
I can contact the DEP and the drinking water program and ask them if we were to adopt this standard as presented, would that satisfy this board?
We would want science behind it.
If it was me, what my desire would be, I would like the water department to do everything I can to help the city improve the housing stock and improve the quality, the tax base, all of the things that I can do to improve the city of Auburn and work with the people in Auburn to do that. At the same time that I'm absolutely gonna do nothing to hurt the lake. To me, I'm only hearing, I'll do nothing to hurt the lake. That's all I'm hearing. And anything else is a no. Where I think there's gray area in here, and there's a room where we could have some new houses in the lake watershed. And maybe new septic, maybe there's ways that we can improve the water by having other old systems replaced by these, you know, we put an Enviro, whatever you call it, into our, we took out a big can that was like this. It was
Old
100
steel
feet
tank?
from 100 feet from our lake, which it's going to my kids and my grandkids. I don't want that lake getting dirty. Like, is there improvements?
I do think it would be a great thing for existing septic systems to develop better standards for replacing the
Okay,
system.
my
if it
question
fails.
was, are you willing to look at this in a way that there are places that we can put houses and be involved in the process as opposed to obstructing the process?
I think the city would be everyone would be in better shape financially if we keep that lake as clean as possible. We're keeping the rates low. We have no other drinking water source. I think it's short-sighted to start to intentionally let your lake get dirty. It just doesn't make sense to me. It just
Okay,
doesn't.
that wasn't my question. I in no way said,
Well, I think our goals are the same. You said that you want to keep the lake clean, you want to develop the city. That's what I want to do too. I want to see more development.
you wanted, but you're saying, so,
But
your
there
answer, my answer was, are you willing to work within the Lake Auburn watershed where there's areas that can be done versus areas that cannot be done? That is zoning. And your answer is no. That's what I'm hearing. Am I hearing it? Am I hearing things?
I think I heard.
I asked-
We would rather keep you'd rather keep the septic standard rather than go to a zoning.
No, I asked, within the Lake Auburn watershed, is there any development that you're are you in favor of? Or anything within the watershed? That's the question.
I don't think we should be building more houses in the watershed. There are things we can do, there are things we are doing. We're trying to increase recreational opportunities around the lake, as long as they're responsible, they're not gonna further deteriorate the water quality.
So-
We have a big push-pull to try to have a responsibility for responsible uses of the lake and things that are going to deteriorate to the point that it's going
So
to be
that's it.
detrimental.
So the answer is, your position is we should build no more houses in the Lake Auburn watershed, period. That's what.
And that's why he's opposing the septic.
Right. Is that yes or no?
I don't think we should adopt the standard that the city is putting forward.
My question was, are you oppose building
I don't
any
think-
new houses in the watershed?
I think it's okay to build houses in the watershed under the current standards we have, I will say that. I don't think we should adopt standards that make it easier to develop
Okay.
within the watershed and further deteriorate water quality.
So how many houses can we build now in the watershed, do you think?
There are houses that are,
They're already there, but I mean, new, I don't think there's any way you can
And
build a
where?
new house on any place in the watershed right now.
No, you can.
Or you
Are
can.
these standards out, are we talking about outside of the overlay district?
It's a handful.
Talking about within
Maybe
it?
10.
within the Lake Auburn watershed. Any wa-
The overlay
any-
So
any
the
drains-
overlay is not including all of the Lake Auburn watershed. That's the rules that these zones
Okay,
that we're.
so
Yeah, it's,
Right.
yes, anything that's within the Lake Auburn, anything that drains into Lake Auburn.
So
is the Lake Auburn.
you're-
That's what this is.
So, as long as, but it's only Auburn.
Right.
Because Turner's developing in the watershed.
Right.
Is that
so it's-
allowed in our
so-
our ordinance?
Auburn taxpayers are, what's the word I'm looking for?
This ordinance is not addressing any
We're
outlying
adversely
town.
affected by their.
We are supplementing,
Subsidizing?
subsidizing.
Well, no,
Turner-
we're actually paying for what they're doing, we're paying through our more restricted efforts.
That's correct.
And the fact that if we have to clean something up, or if filtration ever comes around, if we're continuing what we're doing right now, there'll be a reason why we have to go to filtration. Because they're not playing by the rules. It's kind of
Right.
like global climate change, if we do it right, but China and Russia don't, global climate change
Yeah,
continues
it's
on
a
because the
far
other countries
windstorm.
are continuing.
So, again, so if this is where, as LawPac, I mean, why are we allowing Turner and Buckfield and Minot and these other places that are in the watershed, why are we allowing them to build houses and having the Auburn taxpayers subsidize them?
We just don't have the
The
jurisdiction.
other,
No,
well,
we do.
the other
We have
towns,
jurisdiction.
So,
the other
again,
towns
I'm-
the other towns are represented through the commission. And we rely on them to buy into what we are trying to do to protect the lake, because it's,
The commission,
that's
But
why,
they
that's
don't
why
have a
they're
net.
part of that board.
This board has the power to amend these rules to include Minot, Hebron, and
yeah, that's what I
Buckfield.
mean, we don't have that now.
Turner.
So we have no control over it because it's
Right.
not in there yet.
But this
We have to-
board can amend these. Are they gonna do it? Are they gonna adopt it like,
Aren't the zones already in there?
no,
For
not all of
those-
them.
Some of
And
it.
Foster's is not even in here, so this hasn't been updated since supposedly the city has adopted the ordinance. So long story short, we really need to send a recommendation back to the city of Auburn as a board, as a trustee board, that says we're okay with the
Yeah.
septic standards, but we need extra protection.
What I'm asking is I'm asking Sid, who is our engineer, that is, you're holding Auburn to a standard that we're not holding Turner, and we're not holding Buckfield, and we're not holding anybody else.
Good point.
And that I would ask that you be on Auburn's side and say, if this is what your standard should be, then we should be advocating to these other towns, and we should not be punishing the Auburn taxpayer who is subsidizing these other towns. Because you drive 1 foot up the street and there's a house there, building a big fancy house that is paying taxes to Turner, in a place that 10 feet down the street, you can't build one in Auburn.
So LawPac should be pushing what you're saying.
All I'm
That's
saying
not
is,
us, that's LawPac to do that.
all I'm saying is, it's not this standard. 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 that is no, we're not doing anything in the watershed, only in Auburn. It's not consistent. And so therefore, we have to take a look, and I think as a responsible caretakers of the Auburn, as I sit as a city councilor, I am responsible to the taxpayers of Auburn. That's a problem. Because 100 houses at, I'm not gonna ask you what you pay in taxes.
11 grand.
Somebody do the math for me. What's 100 houses at 10 grand a piece is,
It's huge.
it's $1 million
A year.
a year. That we are saying the city of Auburn cannot have because of a standard that we're not holding other communities to.
It's 300 kids that have to go to school somewhere.
Yeah,
No,
we're gonna
I
be
would
building a new
say,
school.
once you get to
Good.
that level of house, your kids are in
Those-
college.
those 100
We're gonna
people,
pay for it.
You're not-
high-end, high-spending, economically vibrant people that are gonna go to restaurants and pay for AAU programs and are gonna buy cars and are gonna buy all the other things that go on in a house in the watershed.
So
Hundreds
why,
and hundreds of thousands of dollars in economic benefit a year.
why isn't the city looking to build houses other than in the watershed overlay, or Washington Street, or Court Street? I see no other place that the city's talking about building houses in the city of Auburn, and there's a loss of land. So you're a city councilor, so can you
Wait,
tell me
so
why
we
they aren't looking
are-
at other places?
So
And why
we're
isn't it in
also,
here?
we are also looking at zoning in the downtown area
Right?
it's called, I was just talking, it's common where you can fill in additional units into places that didn't have, under current zoning, it's a non-conforming lot, so you can't do anything with it. When you go to, what's the term I'm looking for?
Is it mixed use?
Mixed, no, it's
No,
not
no.
mixed use,
Accessory
it's,
dwellings.
yeah, it's, zoning, it's,
CC.
form-based codes.
Form-based.
Form-based codes eliminates the non-compliant lots, so that, because it didn't conform with all the setbacks here, you can put, form-based coding means you can't put a skyscraper next to a single family, but you can put
Well, form-based
something that
code means
fits.
you build a house a certain way with a certain door, and a certain window size, and so many feet from the curb, and somebody with height, and has to have certain kind of siding.
It's,
That form-based code is so specific. that
it's
they
no,
want
it's
to
not,
look at it.
it's not, the form-based code means you have to, as long as it fits in the neighborhood, it can be built, basically. It's, and so now we have houses that don't conform because they were built in New Auburn, and they're 1 foot from the sidewalk.
Yeah.
And then now, there's an empty lot in New Auburn, and no one can build on it because it doesn't conform to the new restrictions. So form-based code says, all right, it just allows people to do things in places that, so that's happening, that's on the agenda, that's on the docket for this spring in the city council to adopt. It's already been read a couple of times, once or twice, and it's up for the final. That's gonna allow infill all over the city, downtown. There's also other things that were put there, that are coming out with looking at new areas to develop.
So, okay, so the city
course.
is thinking
Oh, yeah.
about other areas, not just focusing on these. other
That was
areas
part of
where
the,
they
that
could
was part of the
build-
whole discussion in Ag Zone, where we're saying no development in the Ag Zone whatsoever. It doesn't matter whether you could ever put a farm there or not. Well, you could put some nice houses and not disrupt the land that much. So there is, but again, we're
City
running
is gonna be
into.
looking at other parts
Yes.
of the city to build
Oh, yeah.
homes.
Yeah,
Of course.
They just haven't done it
They're
yet.
putting out at exit 75, there's talk of a whole apartment buildings and housing out there. There's,
Where's that?
out by exit 75.
Exit 75, okay.
Right.
Well, I think that, getting back to
Yeah.
this discussion.
Yeah, just,
Right.
getting back to this
I
discussion.
think that really,
Thank you.
personally, what I like to see, so that we don't go till 7 o'clock, but what I like to see is, I like to see if we can get some sort of clarification if changing to a man-made septic system would void and cause us to lose our waiver.
Yep, That's
I
question.
think we need to have that, that's science and.
It has a science to back
Not
up their
having the
reasoning.
opinion, the guy on the phone says, yeah, that would kill and cancel your waiver, okay, and then you
Yeah.
killed them. But
Yeah,
give
tell
us
us.
the
Give us
specific science as to
something
why.
in writing that
So
says
we
that.
know, now this is an issue that's gonna go to planning board and it's gonna come back to council, so I think we got some time before it
Yeah.
actually becomes something that council's gonna try to push. And then I think it's up to the Watershed Protection Commission to voice their opinion, because I remember when we tried to change the farming standards in the watershed, the Protection Commission got up there and Jim Frost was representing them, saying this is why you can't do that. That's the commission, they're following our bylaws to protect the lake. So our bylaws don't give them that purview to do that. And then, but I think we gotta wait until we see what that comes about before we can, again, put forward. But my opinion is as long as the science says you can do it, then I think we either have to change to a zoning, which I like your idea. If something's 3,000 feet from the lake but happens to be in the protection in the watershed, why can't you do with this septic system that's 3,000 feet from the lake?
Yeah.
But
Or
you can't do-
4,000,
And-
depending on slopes.
And I'd ask,
That's
and I would
science.
ask
You can't.
our person that is the engineer and the superintendent of the water commission, the water district, to participate in that process. That's what and be, because it's already being done in other towns.
Right.
The cat's out of the bag.
And we could force the other
And the
towns to-
phosphorus coming in is coming down from other towns.
30-some% of it.
Yeah.
And if we set that rule that said you can't do anything within so many feet of the lake, and if you're within 1,000 feet of the lake, you have to have this science, that would also be a rule that would have to be followed by Buckfield and Turner, so they would also have to do
Yeah.
the same thing that's been deemed as safe as long as you're doing this. And that doesn't take this entire overlay and make it impossible to build on. Just because we have a septic rule, it makes it impossible to build on anything in the Shannon watershed.
I mean, I respect.
So there could be a
the- I-
compromise there, not
Right,
allowing
there's gotta be.
all these houses to go around the lake, but maybe some that are on the outskirts that would be safe with the distance and the right septic.
Yeah.
That's safe, and the science says it, and the drinking water standards say, yeah, you know that, as long as you're doing that, you won't lose your waiver.
Yeah, and I
So are
like,
we
I
clear
like your
with the-
idea of
Yeah,
some people, so,
Are we clear with the director for him? Is it just that, or should he also meet, maybe with yourself and myself, with Eric Cousins? Is it John, the new engineer that's got a septic background? I mean, I grew up building septic systems, so I know my shit, I mean, literally. So I don't want the same BS to happen for the last 30 years, because we just always did it that
that's
way.
my concern. And again, Auburn has been getting the short end of the stick, because other towns are not following this, and they're taking advantage of us. And there's big houses and rich people living in Turner, right up the street, that could have built a house in our town and been paying Auburn taxes. So we want to find out about, Sid, you're gonna reach out to the
So
EPA.
what's the directive here?
Number one,
It's not EPA.
whoever the drinking water people that are overseeing and determining our waiver.
Is Norm Laney still up there, by the way?
No.
Okay, so we won't have to go all
So
the
we
way
want to
down.
find out if this 36-inch man-made septic system, the state standard, if it would be submersible within the watershed and not cancel our waiver.
So will importing fill violate our waiver?
Well,
No. This specifically,
Yeah,
this septic system with imported fill, done this way,
by state
specifically,
standards.
by state standards.
Can we achieve the same performance standards of a 36-inch system?
I'm not talking about performance
Natural.
standards. I'm talking, well, you want to know if it's going to violate our waiver, right? Is that what you want to know?
That's what we're on.
We're looking,
And we want to know why.
but I want to know again, this is what is proposed here.
Mhm.
Will this violate, what is proposed here that is said to be safe and following, is this state approved? Can
They
you
have
do
purview.
this?
The state has purview of our waiver. The EPA gave us the waiver.
The state
Right.
is to-
But this, what was proposed at city council, is this state approved, legal, according to the state?
It's 10 times better.
Not in the watershed.
But
It
that's
is
by the city.
But it's not by us.
But that's, I'm talking about the state. This is So
State standards.
engineers looked at this, people that care about the environment looked at this, correct? This is environmentally conscious people approved this. So does this approved thing by the state violate our our waiver? Not the importation of fill, this standard, specifically as approved by the state.
It's state rules.
State rules. Do the state rules violate our waiver? That's what it is, not if we bring in fill and then get a letter from them saying you can't bring in fill. That's not the question. Do the state standards for septic violate our waiver in the
We
watershed?
currently have already in place. The 36 inches is already in place, right?
It's better than the state standards. They say it's home rule, it's more restrictive.
So our current restriction,
I don't understand the question at that point.
because that's our current
That's it.
restriction.
No, there's too much swirling around here right now.
Again, I'm trying to get a very specific, and again, I'm feeling, I think you understand what we're trying to
Well,
say.
what the city is.
Because you're
the ci-
against any building, any houses, period.
What the city is trying to pass does not void state septic standards. We have adopted specific standards in the watershed. So asking if this is gonna violate state standards, no, it won't.
That's not state
This
standards.
is
Will
one
it
page.
void our waiver?
Okay,
Will-
that's the
will-
question.
Will these
Will-
recommended septic design standards void our waiver?
That's what I'm
the
asking.
question.
Okay. Okay,
As of on appendix-
will this proposed ordinance change violate our waiver?
No. Specifically, will you give him the specific documentation of
Right
the
there. It says
terminology?
recommended septic
What-
design
where it is.
standard.
That, right there, Sid.
Okay.
Will that paragraph, and if we do that, according to these engineers, void our waiver of filtration?
That's the question for them. And we want documented
As to why.
as to why, one way or the other. You can photocopy that page and mail it and email it to them.
It's the very last page.
That includes the importation of fill. That's part of this proposal.
Again, but the question
Yeah.
is the question is,
It's more than that. It's curtain drains, it's
Right, I know
clay
that.
linings.
But as I
then
pointed
why
out
did
in
you say,
my,
right,
Yes.
that standard? If you, I would prefer if you photocopied that and emailed them that.
Yeah. Our consultants are recommending this design standard. Will it cause a waiver of filtration violation?
will adopting
The page that we're
That
talking
system.
about.
violate our waiver?
Recommended.
Right now, we don't have it.
Yes.
That makes sense. And then also, please give us the science behind why you say it would, or even wouldn't for that matter.
Right, meaning the person that's giving us.
Give us a good explanation as to why or why not that would work.
That would cause a waiver or
And then
not.
that would be very important, because that is all.
Because I'd like to get that to the planning board.
Right, they should know. that-
They need to know that.
right. And specifically, not anecdotally, but specifically from the horse's mouth. I agree.
Okay.
Because
So
we can't,
We have the next step.
yeah, so so, is there anything else that we need out of that?
Nope, I think we had, I think that what we need to do maybe in a future meeting is to just maybe have a consensus of the board here, how we feel, if this goes any further,
Yeah, once we
how
go.
we feel, so that when Sid is addressing the public,
Mhm.
or talk to anybody about it, he can have his opinion, but he can also relay the board's opinion if there is.
I am not going to give my opinion to the public without the board's authorization.
Right, so,
Just so you know, that's ridiculous.
So what we're gonna do then is we need to have a consensus, not tonight, but
Yeah,
as we
right.
get closer to this coming to hitting the news that they're gonna vote on it, you guys.
well, and Sid's already been reached out, and he said he's gonna wait till, he doesn't have an opinion because the trustees.
Well, thank you for
the-
I have an opinion.
I know, it's all right.
I have an opinion, but I'm not going to publicly, put myself out there if the trustees aren't going to back me up.
So, is that good?
Do you think we get, okay,
I
thank
think
you.
we're good next.
All right, so,
As long as, like I say, on a future agenda item,
yep,
when this thing comes back to the planning board, that we have another discussion
we-
as to what our opinion is overall, so that then we'll know.
And once you get a response back, and maybe once you get a response back on that,
We'll have our, maybe change some opinions.
right, it's absolutely, I am not sold on one way or the other. If it's no, then no. But then I'm gonna go to Turner.
That's right, build a big
And
house.
say, no, and say,
Tearing
where's
down
the
houses.
septic standards in here?
That's
And
another
if this is
discussion,
gonna be,
How would
then
you-
where's LawPac? Why is LawPac allowing people to build houses in Turner in our watershed? If we can't do it, so, all right. I know, Casey, I appreciate that, Casey. All right, risk resiliency assessment emergency response plan.
Yes. This is just an FYI, just John, you might remember, this is a document that every water utility is required to do. We got ours done, we meet the America Water Infrastructure Act. Here's the report.
Are you going over that page by page?
Yes,
You're gonna read that to us like
This is the only copy I have, but this was something mandated. We got a grant to pay for half of this, just to let you know it's done and in our hands, and we're in compliance.
Good.
If anyone does want to see it, they are more than welcome. But-
Capital improvement, so do we need it, everyone good with that?
Yep.
Capital improvement plan? There you go, Casey, I'm moving along that.
Yep, there's I emailed you a copy of that, and I think you have a hard copy in front of you as well. I think it was
Yeah.
passed around, right?
Yep.
So that is our capital improvement plan. So we are going to be referencing that document quite often and using that for guiding us to replace our infrastructure.
Let's do this, if anybody has any questions, let's get them set for the next meeting, would that be
Yeah.
good?
Yeah.
All right, so read through it, any questions for next meeting, okay? Old business, 10-person complaint,
Right, you might have, I don't know if you got my email today, that was deliberated by the PUC this morning, and they did dismiss both cases as without merit. So that was the final ruling that came down.
Okay.
So what does that mean? Does that mean you think that Lewiston's just gonna avoid the discussion now?
I haven't talked to Lewiston since this passed this morning. I will call them, I'm not in tomorrow, I will call them Friday and see what their, I guess their plan is at this point. We're all waiting for this decision.
I'm sure they don't want to do anything. Well, President, I'd like to make a motion to activate our Portland Authority attorneys. And I'm saying that so we can just discuss it briefly and vote on it.
do we have a second?
Yeah, sorry.
Second for discussion
Motion
purposes,
to what,
okay.
Dan?
To activate our Portland attorneys.
We had a.
Drum it in with some.
Yep.
Activate our report, what now?
We are fat on money because of canceled projects, and we can afford a few $1,000 to get them going and see what they can do for us.
Have them give us an evaluation on the situation
Yeah.
and based on the thing, okay, so
So what are you talking about, our options in terms of negotiation for
Yeah.
now that
cost
we're,
sharing, or what are we,
yeah,
I just need some
Right.
Well, we
specifics.
were gonna get,
Well,
we
the only-
did an RFP and we had one person, one
Right.
firm, and what it was going to be was, first of all, understanding all the documents, and then helping us make recommendations on what we could do. There was, then we had to come to the fork in the road, whether we were gonna
Yeah.
negotiate or we were gonna go to court. But to get to that point was $40,000 to $50,000.
And we put that on hold because we were waiting for the PUC
PUC.
decision to be
So
final.
we're looking to spend $40,000 to $50,000 maybe, to have them do all the research, to go through all these documents, then to come up with that fork in the road, if we go to Lewiston and negotiate
So
with
we
what
have
they
the
told us.
proposal that was in phases, is that the one I'm
Yeah.
remembering correctly? So with the first
Right.
phase, we're saying,
Data gathering.
And then the first thing you have to do is learn all about our organization, get all the documents, understand them, find out which ones are overlapping, which ones can be eliminated normally, maybe some of them can be eliminated because they overlap by another. Look at all that stuff so we can find.
I think we need to figure out.
hold on, Casey.
What if it's $100,000 or $200,000?
well, that's why it's in
30,000
phases,
a
I
year.
think, because the first phase
But you
was to
start one
learn,
phase and you
and
say
it was small.
70.
Well, here's
$70,000.
And then the second phase
Hold
was
on.
to, go ahead.
But if you do it in phases, and you say, we've run out of money at 40,000, we need another 40, and we'll get closer to the next phase, and it can be an endless trap of money going out.
I
And
think we
you're
should
not-
review the document that, I thought that it had phases of deliverables. Phase
They
one
have-
was assess the situation for a smaller fee to start off,
Their assessment was,
And then-
had all kinds of caveats about, we're not sure until we get into this thing, and that's it.
And the estimate was, again, 40,000 to 50,000, but that was just.
for
an
all of
estimate.
it.
No, that was just to get.
That was
Yeah.
just the first phase?
But what is certain 70 grand a year that we're losing because we're not
So
engaging?
what, let's,
You can lose it to lawyers.
I want to see
So-
the document again. Can I
Yeah.
see that proposal again?
so I don't, we don't have that, let's, what I'd like, where is that document and the response back from, do we have the response and the document from what the attorney?
Yep.
Can you have them, can you resend that to all of us? We're gonna
We
evaluate
never got an
that.
electronic copy of it, at least, did we?
Was it an electronic copy or?
I think it was. I can get it to you. all.
Okay.
Let's-
let's
Executive
get it-
summary might have been, but I don't get the
Let's
document.
get that document to all of us, and then we will have this as an agenda item next month, for the next meeting,
So I'll withdraw my motion.
okay? We are gonna, and we're gonna read that, and Dan, let's put a specific number to that motion for next meeting, so we can put that on the table and exactly what we wanna do with that
Okay.
attorney,
In
okay?
the meantime, Sid, you'll contact Lewiston and find out
What do we
where
need
their
to ask
position is now
them?
that the decision is made. Because if they want to come to the table and still talk,
They're not gonna.
but if they're not, well,
Better off
I
doing that than
think,
going to
let's
the
do,
attorney.
all right, let's put the agenda item on the next meeting, and
then,
at the same time, Sid, you continue to move forward with them as they've been willing to meet with us up to this
I
point.
do want to point out that the reason they dismissed it was because they felt there was material progress being made. So, and because we have had little objections we put in here, that we didn't think that that was necessarily material progress. But it's still, their whole decision is based on the fact that it looks like we're communicating and we're resolving our problem. So if we get a no, and I want it in writing, if they say, no, we're done, just like they did with the filtration letter, we're not interested in participating in any ground
Bonding.
study, bonding, to look at the filtration, because we think we're great for the next 5 years. I want it in writing saying, no, we've decided we're to end negotiations and we're happy with the way things are, just like they did before, which then should be sent in, I think, to the PUC saying, well, thanks to, here's the progress so far. Lewiston has sent us a letter saying they're
Yeah.
done because your decision makes
Well,
them think they're
put it on
gonna
record, that the ball is now in our court to discuss what our options are, and that's why we're, I think, have the agenda item to talk about.
This,
Yeah.
no, what they've done is they've said, now that you guys are talking together, we don't need to worry about this and we're dropping it without merit because we're solving our own problem. But we had objections, so our answer said, no, this is not much of a material progress here, and we objected, but they still dismissed it without merit. So I just think we need to go again to Lewiston and ask them, okay, when can we meet the next time?
Yeah.
Now, we're done, well, please, could you send that to me in writing, the form of letter that you're done with any negotiations regarding cost sharing?
Right.
Yep, I'll do that.
Because then we can go to the, then we
PUC and
decide we
say-
want to do this with the attorney, we can say, here's what
Right.
the PUC said, here's this, what do we do?
And we can also relay to the PUC saying, thank you for your opinion because you thought we were making progress, well, the progress is just ended. So the entire basis of your dismissal is just down the tubes.
Right, good, okay.
Very good.
Well, the
Good,
second,
so that's now for the
there was
next
no
meeting.
Lewiston complaining.
Excellent, excellent,
Those
good.
Lewiston ratepayers complaining, but there was also, we were making material progress.
All right. Good. Review of the bylaws.
Yeah, just an update. We sent to you the strikeouts. It's all technical revisions. The only thing we got going is we're going to schedule a meeting, like maybe a month and a half, 2 months from now, and invite stakeholders. So
Okay.
LawPEC, City of Auburn, City of Lewiston, obviously staff. But in the meantime, Jason and I will be looking for your concerns, comments on the. There's really nothing in there substantive.
Well, there is, what I looked at.
There was? Oh, good, good.
Because
Then-
you were talking about, first of all, the septic standards were gonna be written in, maybe,
Okay, so that's
allowing for.
a different document.
No,
Okay, that's a different,
not in this,
Yeah, so that's a whole separate ordinance
okay.
that this committee can continue to work on, where we can get the phosphorus control ordinances. First of all, we really need to find out if it's valid.
Well,
Supposedly, it's
that has nothing
according to
do
Jim,
with
it's never been repealed, but yet it's word for word, but it isn't, because if you look at the city overlay, chapter 60, they're missing the phosphorus control ordinance, they're missing a bunch of stuff that when this was created. So we'll look into that, but as far as this document,
And that's,
send your comments,
what's the name of the
concerns.
document?
This is the
bylaws
POLA.
for
Well, I thought I
protection of
clicked on
land.
the
Protection.
polo when I was looking at your
He
revision.
might have mentioned the overlay, or the zoning ordinance separately. That came out of our discussions with Jim, and his actual point was that that ordinance, as written there, has primacy, I forget the word, authority over the council's
Absolutely.
ordinance. So
Well,
they
this
can
was a-
change
Yeah,
their,
This was
their,
directly watershed protection commission.
Right. And we've only gotten down to the intake levels. So just there, we're just continuing to work on it.
And this is AWD's document, it's not the Protection Commission.
Right, this is our
They-
document directing them.
Right.
That's what they use as a.
Yeah, just read through the strikeouts, that's all we're asking you to do, and let us know if, what is this gonna do, you know, or, I mean, Sid's gonna have some questions too, we can get together and meet.
The other thing is, these are the technical revisions that Jim had put up in his document that separate technical from anything substantial, and we deemed all this to be technical. If anybody disagrees, certainly we want to know about it. We can go through line by line in a workshop if that's needed, I don't know. But the next step for us would be to check in with Jim directionally to start talking about anything substantial that anybody wants to bring in this board or our group or whoever. We'll kind of keep a list of those things and have that as a future. We're not tackling major changes right now with this process that we've done so far. It's strikeouts of terms that are outdated and things like that and wording.
We were like 90% complete doing a revision, and we don't have to look at it for another 5 years. That's basically our goal, is just to make a revision happen, because that's what it says we should be doing. So we're really not going like, hey, let's allow swimming. I mean, we might try to push in limited bodily contact where you can reach in. I think I said this before. You could grab your fish, you could launch your kayak, you can let your dog have some water, you know, drink some water. And that would be predicated on, well, the consultants say we can have 50 people swimming and it's not going to harm the lake. Why not a limited, no bathing, but a limited contact? And that would be the only substantive item, and we would actually have a workshop or an agenda item for this,
And we wouldn't
for this
push that in just
trustee
to
to
correct-
put it in or to not put it in.
That would be a discussion that has to happen as part
Yeah.
of the process.
Otherwise, we're not moving to do anything else other than that, limited bodily contact.
Can I, has anybody, I've never heard of anybody getting a ticket for,
No, they have.
have they?
Yep.
Now, who does that? I mean,
Police.
The police? Yeah, police do.
We contract out, you can tell a bit more about contracting out to the APD.
Well, they do the.
So they actually get it,
Yeah, we
so
pay
someone's got a
APD to do
$2,500
controls.
bond?
But no one's challenged it yet, I think. That's a true statement, right?
No one's what?
Everyone's just paid their ticket. And it wasn't $2,500. I don't
How
think.
much is it?
Up to.
I think it is.
No, but I mean, that's what it says, up to $2,500. But I mean, I could check with,
I was just
just out of
curious.
curiosity,
Yeah,
check
yeah.
with Tim Kugel or Jason Moen and say, where would this be a record? Could you type in touching Lake
I can't
Auburn?
imagine there's many we getting handed out.
It's happened though.
Yeah.
People have been swimming around Lake
Where?
Auburn, they get a citation. And
Okay, so
that's
it's been
what
something, it's been something
Egregious.
major, like
Yeah,
like
skinny
that.
dipping with a bunch
Sticking
of
their
wine
hand in the
coolers
lake.
left on the shoreline? No, seriously, I mean,
Okay,
that's
all
fun,
right,
right?
so, good, so, bonding.
Yeah, so, on that issue, I
Do
just
we have
passed
a meeting
around.
date? We didn't publish that. We should.
We'll give it to Sid and staff. Like I said, it'll be a month and a half, 2 months, so it's not short notice.
Okay,
Because you gotta meet with Jim one more
That's-
time.
Okay, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
okay, good,
So the
thank you.
onto the bonding issue, the last meeting we had, directed to reach out to Lewiston to gauge their interest in participating in a shovel-ready set of plans and specs for a filter plant, and I just passed to you. This letter came in after this agenda packet went out in the mail. I think I emailed it to you, but here's a hard copy of Lewiston's response. At this time, it's not a priority
Yeah,
for them. It's in their CIP, and it always is, but it hasn't risen to the top to be funded.
So,
You emailed this to us.
yeah, but so bonding for capital improvements wasn't just for this. It was also
For pipe.
for pipe.
Yeah, and you were looking into, I think, were you looking into a possibility of a $1 or $2 million bond or something?
Yes, it didn't get prioritized. At the last round of the federal stimulus money, I put in a $2.5 million request for pipe replacement and a $2.5 million request for a shovel-ready filter plant.
So the bonding, which is like we talked about yesterday for the sewer, is up in the spring. For that same bond that we're getting for the sewer, for the tank. That same bond. The same mechanism, the same bonding facility. right? Which is what?
A general resolution bond, you're talking?
Is that what we're doing for the thing? It's gonna be like 1%.
That's, yes, that's what we're considering. We're also going to be resubmitting to the Clean Water SRF because there is a possibility of
Correct.
getting funded.
But a straight bond. If we're gonna just bond
Right.
it, it would be the general resolution fund, or whatever,
Yep.
right? That has to be done in March, right?
Mhm.
Okay. We talked about bonding $1 or $2 million worth of pipe, since it's 1%. That's what we'd like to do. And I think that's what, if we delay this and delay it, we're gonna lose our window, and then rates are gonna be 5% next year.
Yeah, we talked about first checking,
Right now.
looking for that one that was potentially forgivable, if that's not available, then we go to general obligation.
It wasn't worth the forgivable one.
Right.
Power button there to shut the camera.
Fees, it's
Administration
not right.
costs and fees, it was-
So can we,
Can Andy make a motion as treasurer? And I'll definitely want to second this. I just don't know how to put the words.
yeah, to go forward with a general, for,
Really?
Let me run out there real quick.
Whereabouts?
858 mine, right by the Family Dollar. So I just called the kidney center, they're gonna be shut off.
Yeah, okay.
So,
We have water main break?
yep,
Yeah, mine,
Ooh, that's the way I go home, or is it a block we might have?
not yet.
It's up by the kidney
We'll be
center.
soon. The salon.
Oh, it's out past there, it's by the kidney.
Well, it affects the kidney center because they're just a little up beyond.
The dialysis, okay,
So-
So no, I'm gonna make a motion that, well, that we didn't decide on a dollar amount. Did we?
no, we're talking about, we talked about 1 or 2 years worth of pipe.
And if we're gonna do 2 years worth of pipe, it'd be $2 million.
Because
We're
one,
told that it's 600, well, it's $1 million for 10, for 2 miles of pipe now, right? Over $1 million,
Are you looking at
right?
replacing what we currently have planned for replacement or adding to it?
A combination of both, if we can do it, obviously we do.
Because
what we normally
that's two
do.
different stories.
I thought we were 2.5. So would we just do the 2.5 for now?
Well, we already budget for 2 miles of pipe.
Right.
And so are you saying we're gonna?
so
do
we
4
did a
million?
whole, this is what we did. We did a whole presentation, said latest thing out on the thing that said, if you borrow this, if you, at 1%, then we don't have to raise rates for 15 years, or something like that, right?
Here, here.
So,
We'd have the cash flow there.
and then we
cash
said,
on
oh, we're not gonna do that, we're gonna go see if we can get this forgivable and all this other stuff, we're not doing that, and now it's back up. And we have to do it by March, so please apply for, because I think we had 1 and 2 years, whatever, you guys did the proposal. You put forward those proposals to us, this is if we do it for 1 year, this is if we do 2 years worth of bonding. What were those numbers?
Yeah.
2 years of pipe. I would prefer it's at 1%. Like, let's do 2 years, and then we're in a much better cash position.
And we don't have to worry about raising rates for quite a long time.
Right.
Unless
the
we
bond
wanna
is
spend it
dropping
all
off,
on
right?
additional.
It already
But
dropped.
Yes.
that's another question. Yeah, so I'll make a motion that we authorize superintendent to go after and approve a bond of $2 million for
2
pipe
years.
replacement
Are
for
you
2
look-
years.
And we use that instead of
Are
cash.
you looking to replace 4 miles of pipe?
No, we're gonna go, well,
2
4 years
years.
2
and
years.
4 miles in 2 years. So
Right,
it's not
so
additional,
4
but we're not doing that. Right.
In lieu, instead of cash, we
So you're
use the
looking-
bond.
Right,
Bond 4 miles of pipe replacement.
That's correct. Well, assuming that, I'm saying $2 million will take care of 4 miles. I mean, we're not sure what the pricing is right now, but I think we can do, the current budget's $2 million.
So you're looking at a one-time bond of 2 million.
$2 million.
And second.
Okay, discussion.
Rates are eventually going to have to go up to pay for this bond.
I don't think so. Not at a 1%.
It's
I mean,
free, it's,
The cost was, well, do you remember what it was?
Well, we still
Remember
have to-
you
we still have
you
to
said
pay
what
back
it was
the
and we're
bond.
like.
We gotta
well,
pay the
we
We have
have
one
one back.
retiring. though.
right, it's
Too.
gonna be equivalent, it's like it's budget neutral.
Right, there isn't gonna be any change, that's why we don't have.
The
to
only
raise
thing,
prices.
we're gonna double or triple our cash position. We could create a fund. We could create an emergency fund with the cash that we save for a rainy day. It's 1%, it's virtually free.
No, what you're gonna do is
We have to
you
be
use bond money to
careful
spend on
We gotta
pipe,
spend it
keep
on
the cash,
pipe.
and then keep the cash that's left over.
Right.
For that
Yeah.
purpose. But as
Yeah.
long as we document that we're
Right,
spending
we
the
use
bond money.
the borrowed money for the pipe, and then you take the cash that you have left over, and you put it in
Well, when we
emergency.
say pipe, does that include pump stations, whatever, you know,
Whatever,
valves?
I'll leave that to the engineers. Here's your money that we spend $2 million on to replace 4 miles of pipe.
And then we-
Okay, that includes all that infrastructure.
Then we can build a garage.
Good.
Yeah, or build a garage.
There we go, we may be in a
Why
better
don't we
position to
put
say
that, why don't we
do
put a
that.
garage in there? How much is the garage?
We need to buy that house. or-
Yeah, yeah.
We'll be in an
How much
awful
is the
position to do it.
We got, it's
See, you get
1%.
it.
It's a
Minimum
once in a
maybe.
lifetime
3 years
opportunity.
from now, it could be 3%.
It's
or
basically,
4%. Very quick.
if you look
It
at
will
the
be,
future
yes.
value of cash, it's basically free money. Not that we don't have to pay it back, but it's virtually no interest. It's virtually no interest.
All right, let's move the question, if anybody has.
So, question's been moved. All in favor? All opposed? 6-1. Beautiful.
Motion
Okay.
adjourned.
Yeah, are you good without your trustee open session, or you have?
No,
would you
I
like
think
to-
we need to, one of the next steps we have to talk about is, as part of the bylaws review, which I should have brought it up then, but that overlay district should be looked at and updated and conformed with this, what the city has, especially if the city's talking about making changes. If there's something out of line in the existing document, we're already gonna have work to do to go over it. We've talked to Jim about it, he's looking at it as part of our review, it's kind of all part of the same discussion of the bylaws for protection of the lake. Just, that's one thing I think we should add to our charge, it's gonna have to come back to you guys either way.
Okay.
To look it over and determine what, if anything, should change or recommend the city be conforming to ours. There's discussion that has to happen. I don't know if it's an agenda item or if we just add it to our list for our COLA meeting, next meeting, or. how you-
Dan's looking perplexed.
No, I'm just thinking Pollock for some reason. He has that in his blood.
He wants to go, obviously.
No, I'm good. No, seriously,
Yeah, I'll hold him down for you.
yeah.
You can kick his butt.
I do have a question though when he's finished.
Well, hold on, we got more, are you done? Trustee open session, Okay, Dan.
Any objection to Jason and I continuing the complete review of the protection of Lake Auburn bylaws?
I thought that's what you were.
Yeah, we thought we were good.
I thought
So
we
we're
were just
good.
doing that, okay.
Yeah, so the
Motion
question I had was, in light of a news report a couple months ago, where's the money going for all our used pipe salvage?
Ah,
Did you guys read that?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, do we sell the pipe?
We've got,
Is it
Good
Christmas
salvage?
fund or
I
something?
know a
No,
guy.
we do have a long-standing, and I knew this was going to raise, I don't know, when something like that happens across the state, it sends ripples.
Do I need to sign something?
But
Yes.
the pipe that we salvage from projects, there are different things we do with it. Sometimes, if it's a contracted project, the price for salvage is negotiated into the price of installation. Sometimes we have the contractor leave it, we salvage it, and it is used for a variety of purposes in the district. It can be used, it's something that we keep annually receipts for in and out, and it's used for things like if an employee retires, if there are,
Golden watches?
no, if there are, employees have loved ones that pass away, you send flowers to a funeral, they're used for that type of purpose. We do have a luncheon in the spring and fall for the employees, the Christmas parade that we participate in, all the expenses for that are used from salvage.
I'd like to make a motion to continue use of these monies as it's been used in the past, so that way it's clear in
second.
our district.
I second. Any other discussion?
I would caveat that by saying that I'd like to have some sort of accounting.
We do, yeah,
Yep,
we
he
do.
said he does it, they
So
already
as
do
long as
it
there's
all.
some sort we can
Yep,
get
yep.
it, maybe at annual meeting time or budgetary time or whatever, just showing an accounting of that account, where the money went, what's left over.
Awesome, all in favor? Okay. Well, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So
Second? All in favor? All right. Adjourned.